our teacher. He taught us A-level theatre studies, but he was much more than that. Phil was a real teacher at a time when education was about the whole person. There were no targets and there were no grades. But he taught us how to learn, he made us commit, and he gave us responsibility. We knew he cared because he was genuinely interested in our lives. He gave us so much of his time. He invited us to his house. He asked after our families, how's your mum and dad? We became part of Phil and Jill's family too. He immersed us in the world of theatre. He challenged our small town view of the world. And he made us believe in ourselves because he believed in us. That was powerful. Phil and Fiona Todd took us to 180 plays at least over that time period, often driving us themselves. I don't think any risk assessments were done, nor letters sent to parents. We often went as part of Phil's theatre group, which has been mentioned, and sometimes last minute we'd all just pile in the car. I'm sure many of those trips were heavily subsidised by Phil. We were part of 19 school productions, including Macbeth. Each production involved hours of rehearsals, set design, prop, costume procurement. Towards the end of rehearsals, usually a day or two before the final night, Phil would have one of his big dramatic rants. It was very theatrical. We wouldn't be ready. We hadn't learned our lines. That's Richard. There was no point in going on. It wouldn't go on. We'd sit and listen. I think the first time we felt a bit scared, but we got used to it. It happened every production. He brought the best out in us. It was exciting and we felt part of something special. Jill was always involved too, providing props and costumes, and even her own children, Sarah and Christian, for Macbeth. We also had our last after-show party meal at Phil and Jill's as we were leaving and finishing our A-levels. Tina was vegetarian, and I remember Jill panicking about what she was going to feed her. I can't remember what we ate now, but I do remember the warmth, the laughs, and the belonging to something really special. I think Phil probably took quite a lot of flack for us too at Orwell. Drama was often the excuse for noise, for disruption. The news coverage and success of the plays was great, but a lot of lessons were missed. It happened way too often, and we didn't always have his permission. But he always backed us. He put his trust in us, and in return, we trusted him. We spent many formative years sitting around, discussing plays, rehearsing, and tonight we're going to sit together again and share some of our memories of Phil with you.
When I first heard that we'd been asked to be here tonight, I went up in the loft to see if I could find some old school play photos. What I found was a box absolutely full of photographs, East Anglian Daily Times write-ups, and hundreds of theatre programmes. Then we four met, and we spent an evening just reminiscing about school plays, theatre trips, memories of Phil, and our school plays, and our drama lessons. I remembered winning Mug of the Month. Mug of the Month was the sixth form equivalent of Green Frog Award, the drama award. I remember doing Wig Murder in their main hall, doing improvisations in the sixth form common room. One, strangely, was about a meeting of the Voluntary Euthanasia Society. I remember being in the sixth form and Phil allowing me to go and help with the first year drama classes. And I remember how he was always at the door of the exam hall with a packet of polo mints for all of us. And he always used to say, enjoy it. I always looked forward to my drama lessons. They didn't really feel like hard work, and Phil was not your typical teacher. He was happy for us to call him Phil. He encouraged us, and he had so much enthusiasm for his subject. He instilled in us his love of the theatre. And my collection of programmes is a testament to that. He must have organised more trips for us than all the other teachers put together in all of the school years. So when Orwell High School had their now infamous open evening before the buildings were pulled down, I found myself back in the classroom with Phil, and we commented on how it was like old times. His role that night was to talk about the history of the school, and he didn't take too kindly to one of the prefects coming in and asking him to stop and get out because the fire alarms were going off. True to form, he stayed put and said what he wanted to say. I don't think I ever told Phil how much I appreciated his input in my education, but I do hope, and I suspect, that he knew.
My name's Richard. When I was 16, I learned to play the guitar. Shortly after that, I started writing my own songs. Shortly after that, I started writing songs and pieces of music for the theatrical productions that we put on in Orwell High School under the directorship of Mr. Phil Hadwen. Tonight, Robert and I would like to perform one of those pieces to you. This is from our production of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. Act 5, Scene 3. This is the part of the play where, well, I can't actually remember what happened, but Wendy will be able to tell you because she is now a teacher, and an English teacher too.
This is the part of the play where Hero, which was played by me, was meant to marry Claudio. Claudio rejected Hero because he thought she'd been unfaithful and called her a rotten orange, and she fainted. And they pretended that she was dead in order for Claudio to pay his penance and suffer. He had to sing at her tomb, and this was the song.
Done to death by slanderous tongues was the hero that here lies, death in guerdon of her wrongs, gives her fame which never dies. So the life that died with shame, which in death with glorious fame, hang thou there upon the tomb, praising her. When I am gone, give up, when I am gone.
Phil wasn't just a great teacher, he was, for what felt like a select few of us, a great friend who, in order to encourage our creativity and our development, was prepared to go the extra mile. And I mean that literally. For over a period of 4 years, between 78 and 82, as Wendy said, we went to 180 different theatre professional productions. And we're not just talking about local theatres like the Ipswich Wolseley or Colchester Mercury, but to London's West End, the South Bank, and even at Stratford-upon-Avon. Our trips to the West End were quite the adventure. Usually on a Saturday, we would start out fairly early. There was no Orwell Bridge or Chelmsford bypass in those days. And he would park somewhere near Waterloo, and then the rush would really begin. We would follow him, pacing ahead like a maniacal tour guide to the ticket booth at Leicester Square, where he would purchase tickets for all of us, not just for one, but often two, and many times 3 different shows in just one day. The curtain had barely fallen on the end of the first production when he was up and out of his seats and shooing us to the next production. The roll call of the people, the great actors and directors and shows that we saw was quite extraordinary. So did a little bit of improv and I'd like to share with you some of those.
The RSC, 12th night, with Sherry Lungy, Gareth Thomas and John Woodbine.
If music be the foot of love, play on.
The Phoenix Theatre, Night and Day, with John Thor and
The RSC, Othello with Donald Sinden.
RSC, Much Ado About Nothing, with Jill Baker, Hugh Fraser and Alan Armstrong.
The National Theatre, The Caretaker, with Kenneth Branagh, Warren Mitchell and Jonathan Price.
I'm going to go to sitcom.
The National Theatre, The Life of Galileo, with Michael Gambon.
Piccadilly Theatre, Educating Rita with Julie Waters.
I'm coming in, Annie. That's a stupid big landlord. You want to get that fixed. You are, what am I? You are, am I what? Eh? That's a nice picture, isn't it? Yes. Very, erotic. Yes, I suppose. No suppose about it. Look at the tits on that.
Duke of York's Theatre, Duet for One, with Francis de la Tour.
The Cambridge Arts Theatre, Macbeth, with Brian Cox and Gemma Jones. When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain?
When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won.
That will be ere the set of sun.
Where the place?
Upon the heath.
There to meet with
Macbeth.
There is foul and foul is fair, hopping through the fog and filthy air.
Mercury Theatre, Outside Edge with Helen Fraser.
RSC, Henry IV, Part 1 and 2, with Juliet Stevenson, David Rintoul and Alfred Marks.
Theatre Royal Norwich, Pygmalion with Lorraine Chase.
The National Theatre, Much Ado About Nothing again, with Penelope Wilton, Michael Gambon and Brian Glover.
The Albury Theatre, Powell Joey with Sean Phillips and Dennis Lawson.
Bewitched, bothered and bewildered am I.
The Mermaid Theatre, Children of a Lesser God, with Trevor Eve and Elizabeth Quinn.
The Lyric, Hammersmith, Entertaining Mr. Sloane, with Barbara Windsor, directed by Kenneth Williams.
You'll have to excuse me, Mr. Sloane. I've got some urgent knitting to attend to. Dada, entertain Mr. Sloane. Give him the benefit of your experience.
New London Theatre, Cats with Elaine Page, Brian Blessed and Paul Nicholas.
London Palladium, Barnum, with Michael Crawford.
Theatre Royal Norwich, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, with Margaret Tyzack and Paul Eddington.
The Comedy Theatre, The Crucible, with Brian Glover.
Stratford, Arden of Faversham with Jenny Agutter.
RSC, Macbeth, with Pete Postlethwaite and Bob Peck.
When shall we three meet
again?
The Queen's Theatre, Another Country, with Rupert Everett and Kenneth Branagh.
I was shy. I was very lacking in confidence in year 3, year 9 now. Drama and Phil changed all of that. My first proper role was in Billy Lion as Scruffy Liz with a mucky skirt. It was a very small part, but I loved it. It was perfect for me. I got to kiss Dick and Harold. As a teacher who's directed plays since, I look back and realise how full of potential problems that was, and just how well Phil managed to choose the right roles for us. He brought out absolutely the best in us. I believed I could do whatever I set my mind to after that. Phil heaped praise on us. I remember my last school report said that my friends should be proud of me, my school should be proud of me, my family should be proud of me. My parents laughed. They thought it was a joke. So over the top was it. But Phil knew that praise worked, and he understood that that was going to have a huge impact on us. We thrived under the praise that he heaped on us. I missed my Maths A-level lesson a lot, as I mentioned in the introduction. And if I got challenged or caught, Phil would come along and he'd look at you, he'd roll his eyes, he'd suck his breath in through his teeth, he'd tut, he'd rock backwards and forwards, and then he would back us 100% every single time. It made us feel supported and it made us feel valued. But I failed my Maths A-level. I babysat for Sarah and Christian. Richard often came round too. I think Phil probably paid us both. No, that's not true. He didn't pay either of us. It just got knocked off our theatre bills. After the children went to bed, we we used to rifle through Phil's programmes, hundreds of them, under the bed. Don't know if you knew that. I'd stay the night if it was really late, and in the morning, Phil would cook us sausages. Very, very well done sausages. Nothing else, just sausages and tomato sauce. I came to quite like them, and now, whenever I have a burnt sausage, it does remind me of him. Phil helped me become the person that I am today. His example shaped the kind of teacher that I am. His support, even over the last year, was important as I made some big life changes. He gave me advice. He offered me an alternative perspective, and as ever, he encouraged me to set my sights higher. I'm sure I said thank you thousands of times to him for little things, countless lifts home. But I'm not sure that I ever thanked him properly for the difference that he made to my life then and still now. So thanks, Phil.
In the second, third and fourth years at Orwell High School, I was unfortunate enough to be bullied. I was a tall, skinny kid with a mop of bright red hair, and I looked like a giant swan vesta in the rain. It was enough to make me a target. My defence at the time was to mock my aggressors, to make the assembled crowd laugh as I was slammed against the sports hall wall. It turned out that I was comfortable under pressure in the crowd. Somehow Phil discovered this and invited me as a lowly fourth year to take on a small role in the school play, a rare privilege held normally for the sixth form. Of course, I accepted, and it felt great. I mean, it felt really, really great. I'd never felt more alive than when I walked onto that stage. You see, I was safe, I was immune from the taunts. Phil provided that sanctuary for me, and from that point on, he became my mentor. Having said that, I don't actually recall him teaching me anything. How is it then I feel like I learned so much from him? I think it was that because as a teacher he understood that the idea of asking a question in a way that made the answer worth knowing would make the process of learning much more exciting, an adventure and not a chore. One final story. On the 13th of February 1979, I lost my oldest brother Richard to asthma. I was 18 and he was only 24. The funeral took place not long afterwards, and I found myself alone and a little bit dazed. I felt a hand upon my shoulder, and of course, it was Phil. "Do you want to lift back?" he said, and I nodded my acceptance, and we walked back to his car. I said to him, I mentioned I didn't realise that he'd known my brother, and he turned around to me and he said, "Well, I didn't really. I just thought that you might need some company." And we went back to his place and we sat down and had a cup of tea. I don't really remember what we talked about. We certainly talked, but what I do remember was that fantastic, selfless act where he'd taken an afternoon off school just to make sure that I was okay.
Dear Phil, do you remember that time in class when you set an exam and instead of writing an essay I wrote you a letter explaining how I can't write today because I'm not in the right mood and I can't concentrate? I wouldn't have done that with any other teacher, but I knew you'd understand. Looking back now, it's so clear how much you did for me at school, how you encouraged me, challenged me, indulged me, supported me and educated me. Of course, I didn't really understand at the time just how influential you were in my life. I suppose I took it all for granted, the amount of time, your time, that you spent with us in play rehearsals, theatre trips and just hanging out with you and your family. I was a very bright, creative and talented kid. I didn't get much encouragement at home, and your drama lessons gave me a wonderful opportunity to express myself and to excel. I loved the excitement of being in school plays, the rehearsals, the staging, the arguments and the recognition. Thank you for that. I was going to leave school at 16, but you encouraged me to stay on in the sixth form and do A-level theatre studies. That, in turn, gave me the opportunity to go to London and study performing arts. What an absolute blast that was. Thanks for that too. Even then, you and Fiona would come to watch me in student productions. I love you guys for that. Then, as life pushed me along with new experiences and opportunities, I lost touch with you. But still, theatre, acting, music and performing were always in my life one way or another. And to this day, they continue to be a wonderful way to express myself and connect with people. For that, I will always be very grateful. So, it's strange to be here now with these guys again, paying tribute to you as a teacher, friend, and a wonderful human being. It's such a shame you couldn't be here too. You'd have loved this. We're going to finish now with another one of my songs. But before we do, Wendy would just like to say...
I'd like to thank Megan for asking us to be part of this, and thank you for listening.
Okay, this song is called 4 in the Morning. Thank you. 4 in the morning, my head won't lie still, 'cause something reminds me of all the time left